Good morning. I'm David Larwood, CEO of Valley Fever Solutions. I've been working on this project for a number of years now. My father put over 60 years into it. My mother put over 10 into working on this terrible disease. I'm going to show you first the organism. The organism spreads, it grows in the ground, spreads through the air and lands in your lung, and it forms these nodules called spherules. The organism forms a little basketball and then reproduces inside that basketball, and rapid proliferation leads to horrible inflammation. I'll show you a little bit about that. Our drug knocks out that reproductive cycle. It completely cures the disease. It's a radically new treatment for this disease. Our congressman from my parents' district is Kevin McCarthy, the House Majority Leader. He convened a symposium in Bakersfield in September of 2013. Tom Frieden, CDC, Francis Collins, NIH, got together and said, hey, let's help out with this thing. So they designed this big clinical trial to test a different drug, the standard of care drug in this disease. Trial enrollment's going extremely slowly. I get calls every 2 months saying, when's this drug going to be available? Twice a month. When's this drug going to be available? Because ours just changes the landscape. Valley fever kills 150 people every year. The disease is mostly known in the US. There's some in northern Mexico. It's hot, dry areas. You see a little bit in South America, but the populations aren't very large. Half the known cases are in Phoenix because it's the environment and people. 10% in Tucson, 10% in Bakersfield, where I grew up, which is about 4 hours north of here. 150,000 people are infected, but 2/3 don't even know they're infected. This turns out to be very much like the numbers for polio, which I had and I'll get back to in a moment. A third are symptomatic. For valley fever, the disease lasts 3 months. It's horribly painful. Most people lose a month of work, and then you're also taking out the caregiver. So we'd love to help address these problems. Almost 10,000 people are hospitalized. 1,000 do not respond to any of the existing drugs. They either can't take them because of the side effects or the drugs don't work. Our drug has a different mechanism of action. It's a different story. 150 people die. We're very closely connected with these strong patient advocacy groups. My father he passed away 6 months ago, but we're coming up in the 61st year of the COXI study group. I've been attending for about 10 years. My father started in year 3. There's a very active group that studies this disease very closely. Happily, there's a nice extension of this. This is a novel antifungal, and it's been shown to be useful in Candida and Aspergillus. Those are very important in organ transplant, immune suppressed, and HIV patients. Let me tell you about our poster child. Ava is the sweetest girl. I told you that we get these calls very frequently. Ava's mother reached out to us in about August. Ava had cancer, blood cancer, and had chemotherapy for years. She lives in the Phoenix area. And after she was recovered, the chemotherapy was working. She was getting back on her feet. She got a case of valley fever. The dog is called Gus. He does not have valley fever, but he's a service animal in the Children's Hospital in the Phoenix area. I met Ava about 3 months ago. She has these horrible sores on her legs, and the cocci gets into the bone. She has something called disseminated cocci. So those spherules in the top start in the lung, and if your body suppresses it and you get better, you eradicate that. But if your body doesn't fight it off, for those 10,000 people, it goes into the skin, the brains, and it's very debilitating. She has incredible pain. It's just horrible what she has to go through. I'm wearing something called an AFO, which is a brace mechanism that goes from the toe to the ankle and allows you to stand. I couldn't do this. I had polio as a child. I could not stand at all. I had no strength at all. She has 2 of those AFOs. When I met her, she was so cute. I said, oh, you're wearing AFOs. And she said, oh, you know what these are? And she gets picked on in school because she wears these 2 things. She's different. I was different. I don't know how I survived, but we need to help these people, and this drug should help. So this is the organism I told you. It lives in the soil. It spreads through the air. I've shown you the picture in the lung several times. The reproductive cycle on the lower right is what happens in humans. Our drug knocks that out, just eliminates it. Existing drugs do that somewhat, but on a limited basis. We impact a pathway. There's a skeleton within which the organism replicates. We eradicate the formation of that skeleton. The other drugs slow it down. They will stabilize and prevent the drug from the disease from expanding. We eliminate the disease. This is a picture that's familiar to a lot of people in the drug development area. You start with a lot of preclinical compounds. We're ready for phase 2. We can do the trial. We can have the drug tested and proof of concept this year. We're that close. Everything's in place to do that. That sets us up, and that would be in 20 subjects. Even this year, we could actually start a larger trial, and we could have the drug approved in 2 years. 3 is more likely, but it's possible to get approval in just 3 years. We are really ready to go with this. I mentioned that my father's been studying this for a long time. My mother formed a foundation and raised about $20 million to do vaccine development. So for many years, my biggest competitor was my mother. I got into the business, fortunately, when she was backing away from that, and so she introduced me to some of her friends, and so I've been working on this. This is ready to go. The phase 1 studies were fabulous in the mouse data. It completely eliminates the disease. We have orphan product designation and QIDP. QIDP was part of the GAIN Act. Kevin McCarthy, who I mentioned, was very instrumental in that, as well as the 21st Century Cures Act. There's a lot of political interest in helping diseases in general, but specifically for our disease, which is very helpful. But that doesn't get us there. Grants are slow. You really need private money to get there. So Nikkomycin-Z has been known for a while. We have some new patents on technology. I've been improving the manufacturing process for a number of years now, and we are in scale-up right now. That was one of our big hang-ups, was getting the manufacturing to work properly. We're going to be making 10 kilograms this spring, so we're going to be ready to go into people with the drugs that we're doing right now. Briefly, this is my father. That's me. I moved to Bakersfield when I was 3, so I was exposed, 3 months old, so I was exposed. He went to Korea as a medical missionary where we both got polio. He started building a hospital, which is now one of the largest in Korea. And that's Kevin McCarthy again, me, and my father's in a wheelchair. So his polio was a bit more debilitating, but he was studying the disease. These are some of his notes on the right. It's hard to read in the screen, but basically there's a patient who has the disease for 10 years. They finally put him on drug treatment. The bottom half is a drug treatment, and they're improving extremely slowly. It's just a difficult disease. On the right is some of my father's epidemiology studies. It used to be that if you lived in Bakersfield and you lived there for 30 years, by the time you've been there for 30 years, you had a 90% chance of having been exposed to disease. Remember, a lot of people don't have symptoms, but you had a very hard chance. Now it's more like a third. It's more like a lifetime. You have that risk, but it's a very high chance. This is the molecule, of which I won't go into, but like I said, it interferes with the formation of the scaffolding. It looks like a building block of the scaffold, but it is not, and that's why the drug works. I've been a chemist for a long time. I've been in the business world for a long time. I've got degrees up the wazoo. I was with several very successful Silicon Valley companies. I got taught this stuff by the guy who started Leapfrog. I have many friends that do these things. My partner is one of the leading clinicians in the field. We're recruiting a new board member. We have 4 strong candidates that have done a lot of recent trial efforts. And we're raising money. We were looking for $2 million as soon as we can get it to do the trials. Please come and see pictures of Eva by the coffee, and I'd love to chat more with you. Thank you very much.